Now, it's been a week since the major Amazon Web Services, or AWS, shut down. Across Europe, policymakers and analysts have raised concerns over the growing dominance of US cloud providers. Well, let's take a closer look now at the impact and what it means for Europe's digital future. Well, the outage lasted around 7 to 8 hours, but the disruption was severe. More than 1,000 companies worldwide were affected, with 6.5 million incidents reported across key sectors, including banking, aviation, finance, communications, gaming and retail. Well, in Europe, Amazon, Microsoft and Google control nearly 70% of the cloud services market. By contrast, European providers hold only 15% of their home market. But the European Union has set ambitious goals for cloud tech in its digital transformation plan. By 2030, it aims for 75% of EU businesses to use cloud services, and has also planned to build over 10,000 highly secure and clean energy powered cloud nodes across the region. Well, Rob Kniaz is a founding partner of H-Tree Capital, a London-based technology venture capital firm. Rob, thank you very much for joining me. So we're hearing then about the big three, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, controlling around 70% of the market. What do you think that tells us about the continent's digital resilience?
I think it's not very resilient. It's the same question as before. Why don't we have a Google in Europe? Why don't we have a Facebook in Europe? And all these things are just structural weaknesses that Europe has had for a long time. And you don't have the ability to build these companies, then you don't get the benefits of the infrastructure like the data centers.
I mean, whoever owns the clouds owns so much data. They have the power, don't they? What are the sort of political, geopolitical and economic issues, do you think, around this?
Huge issues. I mean, you're basically at the subject of another jurisdiction. So if one area decides that the U.S. decides they want to do something or shut off a particular customer, they can do that under U.S. law. So it puts the EU in a way under, mostly U.S. law or wherever the cloud provider comes from. And that's a big sovereignty question.
So how do you respond then to critics who argue that Europe's digital regulations sometimes stifle innovation?
Well, great example. So there's all this talk this week of digital resilience in Europe, and the Netherlands, which is a very good location for data centers because of the way it sits on the continent, has a moratorium right now on building any new data centers for politics and for ecological reasons. So you have one side that says we need digital resilience, and the other side that says we're shutting everything down for a year or two. You simply can't have that. You can't have both things to win.
Of course, the EU has launched initiatives like Gaia X, and it's also planning a Cloud and AI Development Act, isn't it? Which they're hoping will triple data center capacity. Are those steps ambitious enough, do you feel?
Probably not. I mean, at the end of the day, the customers will decide based on a series of questions around cost and benefit. So frankly, you have to dump a lot of money in to be cost competitive with the Americans. So unless there's a regulatory environment that forces local customers to use local data centers, you're always going to have a price parity difference with the U.S. providers, and especially with U.S. providers setting up local locations in places like Ireland and Netherlands. Even if the data center is physically in the Netherlands, it's still subject to U.S. law and U.S. reach. So it doesn't solve the problem.
So what do you think would solve the problem? What do you think European governments should be doing now?
I think there are major structural problems in terms of just capital, making sure that these infrastructure pieces are well capitalized. They can't be afterthoughts, and it requires a lot of synergy between the countries. I think we're still too fragmented in Europe, that we have the population together and maybe bigger than the U.S., but the amount of fragmentation is just too high. And then you apply local regulation like in the Netherlands, and you don't have the ability to make these things turnkey like you would in the U.S. So I think it's a combination of political willpower to push things through, and then simply capital. It takes a lot of capital to build this out, and it's a big investment.